Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Red Bull LAN Orlando. I'm Day 9.
And I'm Rob Simpson, and we have been watching Rhett really just pull through that late game. We actually just saw him win one of his games after having a tough time that first time. Really seeing Rhett confront that issue head on.
Oh, yeah. Game number 2 seemed fairly effortless, honestly. I mean, he had that drop come in briefly, but after that, he was able to repel all the threats that Naniwa threw at him relatively easily.
Yeah, and even that first game, we actually almost saw Adrenal Glands end up overpowering the carriers anyway. So he's been pretty close the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things I think Rhett should really have a lot of confidence about. In game number 1, the carriers sprung up in the ultra late game. Whoa, how do you deal with carriers? Well, Rhett just kind of on the fly identified the correct move to do and very comfortably moved forward with it. And then in game number 2, it looked like Rhett was up against another sort of weird thing to do, a Zealot Archon potential, Zealot Templar with a couple of Colossi. Again, Rhett was able to deal with that more easily and won. I think that if he just takes those adjustments from game number 1, plays the Broodlord Infestor a little bit more slowly, I think he's going to be winning a lot more late games.
Yeah, it seems like he did kind of rush to getting out a lot of the Broodlords and had them in strange positions in that first game. Like you had mentioned, he kind of had, I think it was 8 or 9 Broodlords out not too far away from one of the watchtowers, and then all of a sudden all the stalkers show up and it gets messy fast. But if he controls that, he's going to have it spot on.
Yeah, and I always think that this is one of these examples of the way the metagame changes over time. First, the Zergs figure out that the Broodlord Infestor is pretty much an automatic win button. You just build it and boom, Protosses can't win. Then Protosses start being better with their expanding and their passivity and getting the right tech with the motherships and Naniwa with the carriers, very weirdly enough. Now it's time for the Zergs to do that one-step uppage, be doing a lot more defensive lines, the slow creeping forward. And I think the next question, probably in about 2 or 3 months, once most Zerg players are switching to this passive Broodlord style, we're going to see aggressive Warp Prism-based play really spring into popularity.
Yeah, and Warp Prisms are one of those things that you constantly hear people talk about them just being massively underutilized. And I think that there's always room for growth in StarCraft.
Yeah, I really think that, and honestly, one of my favorite phrases is, let the losses come to you. There's no reason to try to theorize about all the weaknesses when you could just keep playing, and whenever you lose, say, how did I go wrong? So right now, Liquid Rhett 1-1 in his challenge, and it's time for a treat. Who's he playing against, Rob?
He's going to be playing against Startail PartinG moving into this third game. They're going to be battling it out on GSL Dual Site.
I'm really excited to end up seeing what Rhett can do to PartinG. It looks like the first thing Rhett's going to do is end up disconnecting from the game, which already puts him at 1-1-1 in his challenge.
So the question is, where will that second tally go on his scorecard?
That is a good question. You know, honestly, Liquid Rhett didn't get to practice his late game as much in what we just saw.
No, he didn't. I mean, he had a lot of trouble in the early game. We actually didn't even see him work on his drones like we normally do.
I mean, didn't even work on his economy, which is really counterintuitive considering his generally macro-focused style.
Right, and he really needs that economy if he's ever going to make it into that late game swap that this challenge is very much focusing on.
That is absolutely true.
You know, we say that we put rules down for the opponents to play against them, and we really only placed parameters based on their builds. We didn't stop them from kicking over the other person's computer.
That is true. That is the metagame. Now, it looks like we have managed to get back into that game. It's time for some GSL Dual Site. Is the crowd ready for Rhett versus PartinG?
As ready as they'll ever be.
Of course, it generally doesn't matter. The crowd's awesome no matter what. Hey, crowd, you want to cheer for no reason?
Oh, man, they were so pumped on that. Good to go. So here on Dual Site, over on the right side of the map, we have our focus player, Rhett. And over here, his opponent playing as the blue toss, we've got PartinG.
Yeah, PartinG is really quickly becoming one of the great Protosses of the modern SC2 time. I was even talking with my brother this morning. Some of you may know my brother. His name is Tasteless. He does cast for the GSL with Artosis.
The GS, huh?
The GS. What? The GS Korean League.
Oh, yes.
Oh, so dominating. You know, and my brother was saying that all the Korean players are constantly talking about PartinG, constantly wanting time to practice against him, constantly wanting replays of his build, never wanting to face him in those Pro League matches. And that's one of the big important aspects to Rhett's training style. He gets the chance to play against the best of the best. I mean, going 1-1 with Naniwa, where his loss was super narrow, real confidence booster for Rhett.
Yeah, and then he even came through and just had such a convincing game 2. So, I mean, that just shows how valuable all of this practice time is at the Red Bull LAN. This is really a very unique experience for these players just to get to boot camp against the world's best.
Now, completely ignoring statistics on the map dual site, one of the big questions of debate players have is whether it's Zerg favored or Protoss favored. And I'll just say, Protoss players think it's Zerg favored, Zerg players think it's Protoss favored, and there's arguments on both sides. Again, ignoring the balance, here's the reasoning behind it. The Zerg players, people claim their favor because you can do all sorts of counterattacks really easily. There's so many entrances to the natural, so many entrances to the third, very hard to get up a fourth base. And likewise, Zerg say Protosses can push ultra quickly across the center of the map. If you think about the Broodlord Infestor style, it will benefit greatly once you get to the Broodlord Infestor late game, because you can easily walk to the Protoss's base as they're so close. Liquid Ret now going for a fast third base. Very curious to see how Ret's going to play this out. He's chosen this map twice in challenge matches.
So maybe this has been something that he either, I get, there's really only two reasons why he would do that. Either he's very confident on it, or he needs to work on it.
Yeah. And that's one of the great benefits of the Red Bull LAN. You get the chance to play in a comfortable, worry-free situation. You have a little bit of pressure put on you thanks to the crowd, but it is not the core goal to end up winning every game. If you lose, nothing happens. You just keep playing.
Right. Exactly, which is, that's comfortable. It's always nice to know that. And here we have Ret. He has taken that fast third, so he is very much going to have a much greater opportunity to work on his drones this game.
PartinG now finishing up that expansion.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
It's important. I really do enjoy drinking Red Bull, but inhaling it I've always had a little bit of a hard time with.
It just turns into an issue when you're drinking it while you're trying to speak.
That is absolutely true. I mean, trying to use... I don't have those energy gills quite grown in yet. Maybe I'll evolve several generations
You just have a tank that you open up on the back of your neck and pour it in? Get a quick reload?
Like I'm a Pez dispenser and you're just pouring the Red Bull in. Yeah, PartinG is doing a very nice job with this wall in. I mean, everyone's always saying, ooh, huge open space, very difficult to deal with. But with this placement, the only place Zerglings can squeeze in is here. So he just easily blocks that with a Zealot.
And really, that Nexus isn't even going to be vulnerable to any real Zergling harassment because you can just do so much by just having a single Zealot there or even using your workers to force them into bad spots.
I think it's an important thing to note from the Protoss point of view. If you build a pylon here, on one hand, it blocks a hatch. And he's forced to build the third here. But that's thinking too small in a box. You're not considering other strategies like the fact that he could go one base Roach, the fact that he could go for some sort of crazy Ling Baneling bust. Building that pylon here will give you so much information. How aggressively is he trying to kill that off? Your probe scout can easily go check the third while the Zerglings are occupied killing off the pylon. So it helps so much in that regard as well. So PartinG is very confident knowing that these geysers are quite late.
And he's got his first Zealot moving across the map. Really, that's just going to be used for going to turn it around. As a matter of fact, oh man, Red actually might get a pretty nice surround onto that Zealot, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, he's sending all those Zerglings forward. It will stop by that watchtower, and with that quick detour, he's going to realize that death may be imminent. Red's quite responsible about building 6 Zerglings instead of 4 because this singular pesky Zealot can always prove to be quite obnoxious. But look at that micro. Oh my God!
Does not lose a single Zergling in that exchange. You can just see how many of them are all the way down to the red HP. Just one slice away. Man, Red, that's one, people talk about Ret's macro. Man, that's the second part of my sentence, but they just don't talk about his micro that much. You actually see it a ton in his ZVZ, just how nice his control is with those Zerglings and Banelings.
Really slick moving there. We do see PartinG going for, the infamous 4-gate Warp Prism play. What you do is you get a couple of sentries up for some defense back home in your base. And then what you're going to do is you're going to load up a sentry and try to force field this ramp while you do some huge harassment here in the main. PartinG knows that his goal is to take an eventual third and play for the late game. That is, of course, Ret's challenge that he's training against today. But this is a very standard opening that segues into that quite neatly. As you can see, you build the Immortal. You can immediately end up getting some kind of Colossus tech out. And we see all the warp gates finishing on up. A couple sentries going to plop down there as well. And will he see the Warp Prism? He does.
Ooh. Yeah, man, Ret getting pretty fortunate with that. Actually surprised that PartinG really didn't try to hug the bottom of the map much closer because, as always, those rogue lings can just gain so much information. And we do have Rhett. He's got that Spire underway already, which means he's going to be able to take back map control. But the question is, how much damage can PartinG do with this Warp Prism harass?
PartinG starting to move forward. Looks like the Lings are rallied into the main base. And here he comes. It looks like he's not going to try to go for the ramp. He's going to try to pinch the Queen off.
Oh, man. They
nice
use all of their energy on the workers and actually are forced to lift off because they didn't have anything to protect from the Lings anymore.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny to see that drop didn't really do any damage, but it certainly didn't take any damage either. So that's one of the more important parts of playing very, very well consistently, just keeping that resources lost as low as possible, as opposed to trying to deal as much damage as possible. And Rhett is very comfortably going into sort of a Ling-Roach mixture.
And he's got his Warp Prism. He hasn't given up quite yet. Right now, he's just using it more for information and to possibly force Rhett into maybe building additional units or putting his army out of position. Because as you can see, PartinG does not have that loaded up right now. Now, surprisingly enough, PartinG was just massively supply blocked and just barely squeezed by that. And now we've got him moving around possibly to harass this third as he establishes his own.
Now keep in mind, Rhett is trying to train for the late game. So right now he's going to have a little bit of a hell trying to defend against all this pushing that PartinG's doing. But Rhett is going to be, looks like, transitioning into a Mutalisk-focused harassment. And the question is, how is he going to pop into that late game Broodlord tech? PartinG doing exactly what was requested, trying to do a little bit of damage while getting up that third base that we see at the south end, but Rhett all over the map, has to not lose that Queen, and real sloppy right there by Rhett.
Oh, so very nice pick off by PartinG, getting into the base and taking out that Queen was a nice move for him. Now, Rhett just has so much stuff at this point. We can see him pushing in onto that third. Very nice force fields from PartinG, able to keep the Roaches away long enough so that they can't really leave any sustained damage, and Rhett is going to keep going with that push.
Looks like Rhett realizes that the buildings at the front are going to be vulnerable. If he walks forward, he's going to get force fielded in half. Just like that, very nice control there by PartinG. The Roaches don't stay alive for long, but now it's going to be the question, can PartinG get enough Stalkers up? Rhett is going to force Stalkers to warp in at the south side while hitting with Mutalisks in the main.
And that's a really nice move to see Rhett doing that, right? It's all about knowing where your opponent's army is going to be, and I very much like this Mutalisk play. Rhett knows that if he gets mobile as quick as possible, he can force PartinG into a bad position, enabling Rhett to get into that late-game composition that he so desires.
Now this, it looks like Rhett's moving in for a nice push here, and again, incredible force fielding by PartinG. It looks like Rhett might be able to seize a win right here at the 12-minute mark. Might not be the goal that he's trying to practice, but again, that's one of the big important aspects of these controlled practice environments. Some games don't work out so well, and you have to reset, and Rhett is doing an amazing job exploiting in the mid-game.
Yeah, and Rhett actually continues to pump out additional Mutalisks as he splits PartinG's army in between his main and his natural, and now we see PartinG throwing down a bunch of desperation force fields, and the Mutalisks come in as additional backup. It's looking like this could be the end of PartinG as Rhett cleans up all of those Immortals.
Oh, great play right now by Rhett, and it might be actually a little too great. He might not even get the opportunity to try out his late game transition, but PartinG is a little bit too stable for that risk.
And we need to see Rhett pull back right now, right? He has almost double the supply at this point. So this is exactly the window of opportunity that he wants. But actually, he's getting out there and he's expanding yet again. And I don't think, still see any infestors on the field for him. I don't think his infestation pit is even down. And he certainly hasn't gone for the hive either.
Now, Rhett is known to try to experiment with this Mutaling style. Obviously, he's more known for his massive armies of Roaches. And note that this game and the last two have been the exact opposite of the Rhett that most people know. Rhett is a Roach Hydra Corruptor player. That's what he does. He is breaking his comfort zone here at the LAN to try to see how these strategies feel. There go down the Photon Cannons in the main. We see the Infestation Pit, the Hive Tech, will be coming up soon.
And so even though that Rhett wasn't exactly focusing super heavily on getting to that infestation pit and to that hive as quickly as possible, you make a great point that as long as he's out of a comfort zone, as long as he's pursuing an opportunity that he hasn't really done, he's in a good place. And now Rhett continuing to push, moving around a lot of Lings into that natural, and PartinG's army is just split into two. He can absolutely use those Zerglings to surround the army on the right while using his Mutalisk to destroy the main.
Great play by Rhett. Yeah, it looks like Rhett's getting, I think Rhett might be a little overeager, might be misanalyzing how many units PartinG actually has. PartinG actually can begin blinking away right now. A lot of Stalkers there down at the natural. Oh no, a blink
it's
underneath.
A blink up.
can do a lot of damage right now. There's actually 16 Mutalisks there, and Rhett sending in more from the backside. I should have known. Rhett loves to macro, and there it looks like those gateways finally get repowered. And it looks like Rhett will have to pull away, but yeesh. Rhett looking very strong.
Well, and Rhett actually even has enough Mutalisks so that he can just go back in there and kill both of those pylons once again. But PartinG has responded, bringing up the Stalkers into the main. Oh, gets a blink up there and takes down a handful of Mutalisks, and Rhett is forced to retreat. But he is just so far ahead at this point.
Onward, brethren. Fight.
Oh, the army's gone.
Oh, it looks like a retreat. Retreat. Liquid Red will have to pull that pair of Overlords that were just sort of boxed into a battle. And PartinG is going to be generous and allow them to stay alive. The Zergling Mutaforce is just hitting at all sides at once. PartinG needs to begin blinking forward, being a little bit more risky with those Stalkers, just like that. But will he be enough? It's all up to the macro of PartinG. We do see the Pathogen Glands. The late game tech is starting to get set up for Rhett. But there's a good game, and Rhett actually is never even going to get the opportunity to see a late game situation.
Right, and there at the end, also in that final engagement, you saw PartinG use his blink possibly a little bit ill-advised there, enabling the Zerglings to get that surround and really just kind of stopping him from being able to stay in that game.
But there's a real problem when you start to fall behind that quickly against a Mutaling player. If you're behind and you try to play conservatively, you essentially are saying, I'll let you kill off a base.
Right.
If you want to keep all your bases alive, you actually, the speed to get between them requires you to be blinking to keep up. But if you've blunk once, you can't blink to retreat. So that always puts you in kind of a risky spot. It's definitely something you don't want to do, but you don't really have a lot of options in that case. So now
blunk timings get very tricky when you're dealing with multiple bases.
A blunk. Getting the past tense of sink is sunk. The past tense of blink is blunk.
And not only are we learning how to play StarCraft 2, but we're learning about the English language here at the Red Bull LAN in Orlando.
That's right, where we learn to be a better speaker.